Welcome into A to Z Sports Primetime on this Tuesday evening. Hope everybody is enjoying the, I was going to say enjoying the weather, but hopefully you're safe from the weather. We've had some pretty significant storms here throughout the course of Middle Tennessee, but you're not here to talk about weather. You're here to talk about the coaching staff. And I think that your defensive coordinator has all the makings of a future head coach. You may be asking yourself, how could that possibly be? They have yet to coach a game. They haven't even had a practice with the vets and rookies mixed in yet. How could you possibly project that Dennard Wilson would have the makings of a future head coach when the man just became a coordinator for the first time? Well, lucky for you. That's something that we're going to work through over the next couple of minutes and certainly dive into why I think Dennard Wilson is probably going to be here for, I can't imagine more than 2 years with the trajectory that this guy is on. So I'll explain my logic behind that. We'll talk about the staff member who stands to have the most instant impact, and we'll get to a gone viral video at the end of the show. We appreciate you guys showing up as is the custom. You know, if you show up on a regular basis, that the custom is to share this show around. So I'll help you do it. If you're hanging out on Facebook, look, I'm on my Facebook. I'm doing some Inception sharing. You should be able to do just the same. You should like the video and share now to public. That's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you're hanging out on Twitter, please retweet the show. And if you're on YouTube or Twitch, like the video and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you don't miss a second of all the great Titans coverage that the A to Z Sports Digital Network is here to provide for you. Corey D. Jackson says Dennard Wilson definitely will be a head coach within 2 years. 100%. Rashid says hopefully he can stay for the next 2 years. Well, we'll talk about this together because I think this man is going to be on a lot of short lists by season's end. Of course, there's a whole season of football to play between now and then. Let's get it started. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch. TrueMavFitness.com for your first workout free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, TrueMav is there to maximize you and your fitness goals. Zen Sports is where you wager on all the NHL, NBA, action, MLB, all your favorite major sports. You can get up to $100 on your no danger first wager with the Zen Sports app and Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com for more information. Dennard Wilson is somebody who's going to be a great quote anytime we get the opportunity to speak with him. And once the regular season begins, we'll speak with him on a weekly basis, just as we will Nick Holtz and Colt Anderson, who's the new special teams coordinator here. With the staff that Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon worked very judiciously this offseason to put together, there's a lot of names who are on an upward trajectory, and Dennard Wilson, the defensive coordinator, is one of them. Now, winning press conferences is not going to have an impact on the winning or losing of games. How they managed to stop, who's on the schedule this year, how they managed to stop Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts on third down is going to matter infinitely more than him quoting George Patton in an introductory press conference. But there are the signs of somebody who has not just larger, I don't want to say larger aspirations than the job he's currently in, although I bet if you asked him in an honest moment, he would say that he has those larger aspirations. He would probably answer the question and say, well, I'm focused on the job that I have now and doing the best job for the team that I'm working with right now. But this is clearly somebody who has higher aspirations in the coaching world. And with Dennard Wilson being a part of this staff, there's a couple of big reasons why he ended up picking Tennessee out of all the different clubs that were offering him defensive coordinator jobs this offseason, of which there were many, and ultimately he chose Tennessee. So there's been a couple of moments where we're getting to know Dennard Wilson, and there's a really good conversation between him and former first-round draft pick Chris Long, who is now doing a podcast called Greenlight, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. But Dennard Wilson and Chris Long have crossover with the Rams, which is also where Dennard Wilson knows Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio from, and more famously, Titans GM Rand Carthon from in their time coming up through the rankings or through the world of coaching and scouting, respectively. So you're going to hear a portion of this conversation with Dennard Wilson. And the question that I'm going to ask you is this: your Two Rivers Ford take on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Which new Titans coach will have the biggest influence in year one? Doesn't have to be Dennard Wilson just because we're talking about him. It could be any one of the assistants. Famously, there are several assistants who are going to have instant impact or have major influence in year one. It could be Brian Callahan. If you listen to the live show with Rand Carthon, you understand that the biggest thing that Rand thinks is being underrated about the football team is the idea that they did hire Brian Callahan to be their head coach this offseason. So which new Titans coach, including the head coach, will have the biggest impact in year one? We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that your Two Rivers Ford take is presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Quality American-made Ford vehicles, over 40 years of delivering that award-winning customer service to you as Middle Tennessee car buyers. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, where you go for all their new non-specialty Ford vehicles sold below MSRP. They are the best in the business for a reason. Go to tworiversford.com for more information about the South's most trusted Ford dealer. So which coach do you think is going to have an immediate impact? Ching Bing says Callahan, but does not specify which one, because famously there are two Callahans on the Titans coaching staff. One the head coach and one the offensive line coach. Wilson, a close second, though. Adam Cruz says Bill Callahan. Jay says Bill. O-line has to be better than the dumpster fire from the previous regime. Nick Holt says Randy Cherry. He's going off the board with the non-play calling OC, and I'd be curious to hear more of the explanation. Ching says he's going with the senior Callahan at this point, the offensive line coach. Lane says Brian, only because of Levis and his development, which is a good case for Nick Holtz, who has some players that he's familiar with, including Calvin Ridley coming over from their year together with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do think that Dennard Wilson is somebody who stands to have a ton of instant impact, and I'll explain why I chose Dennard Wilson over Bill Callahan here in just a second. But this is an interview with Dennard Wilson on the Green Light podcast with Chris Long.
So I look at L'Jarius Sneed and I think that's an aggressive football player. Mm-hmm. He's one of my favorite players in the league, because every negative stereotype of a corner and how he might play on the field and how he might operate, he just shatters it. I mean, he's got a D-line mentality. I heard you. I like this acronym now. DAWG, D-A-W-G, disciplined assholes with grit. Is he is he pretty much on top of the list there?
He's the prototypical one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, how many corners do you find that can run, that can cover, and he's going to line up against the best receivers in the National Football League? Like, you watch him in Kansas City, it doesn't matter who he's going against, and he's going to compete. You might get him, but he's coming back at you even harder. So, being able to get him, and even Cheeto as well, he's another corner that's aggressive, a tough-minded guy. So when you line up against receivers in the league, you got guys that's going to battle, that's not going to waver. They're not going to be afraid of the competition. And that allows you to have that aggressive mindset. So I'm excited about L'Jarius. He's a hell of a guy. He's very smart. He takes coaching. And he's had a lot of success. I mean, 2 years in a row, he got me out the playoffs and obviously in the Super Bowl. So it's good to get him on my team.
He made some big plays down the stretch. Is there one play that when you watched him make it over the last year or two where you're thinking in your meeting room, boy, it'd be nice to coach that guy? I have one in mind, but what's your L'Jarius play?
It's the play in the AFC Championship game last year when Zay Flowers reaches out on the goal line.
Yep.
And you see a DB aggressively attack the ball, and it wasn't just good enough to tackle a guy. He got the ball off of him. Mm-hmm. And if, in hindsight, if you look back at it, if we score that touchdown, maybe the momentum's kind of on our side.
Oh, right? I agree.
He deflated the game. He deflated the momentum with that one play. And it's just not good enough to make the tackle. it's even better because it's all 11 versus the ball.
Yeah.
And as long as we get the ball off of you, that's what matters. And he made a hell of a play that it changed the trajectory of the game.
I always think about
That is Titans defensive coordinator Dennard Wilson on the Green Light Podcast. A to Z Sports Primetime is presented by Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN. You can bet Knicks Pacers. You can bet all of the NBA playoff series, the NHL Stanley Cup postseason, and of course, Major League Baseball going on right now. And you can do so with up to $100 on your no danger first wager using the promo code ATOZTN. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at zensports.com. So Dennard Wilson there talking about his acquisition or the team's acquisition of L'Jarius Sneed and why he likes him to fit that dog mentality, that dog persona that they're seeking as a part of the new look Titans roster. I would have said Dennard Wilson had I not seen a tweet from like literally an hour ago just come across my timeline that makes me want to change my answer from Dennard Wilson to Brian Callahan. Now you would say, okay, well, obviously the head coach is going to have a bigger instant impact on the coaching or on the roster that he's been tasked with taking over, but I don't necessarily think it's always as clean as that because the position coaches and even the coordinators deal with these guys on a much more micro level than does the head coach who's working from 1,000-foot view. But there is a chart that Denny Carter just tweeted out. Denny Carter, who does fantasy, he writes and podcasts about the NFL and does a show on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify about football. And Denny tweeted out a graphic that is absolutely wild to me. Early down pass frequency from 2018 to 2023. The early down pass frequency with a win probability between 20 and 80%, regular season weeks 1 through 18, playoffs not included. The Kansas City Chiefs have the highest early down passing frequency. 65% of the time is what, or just under 65% of the time, is how often the Chiefs are passing on early downs. Can you guess who the last team in the league since 2018, since the Mike Vrabel era began, is on this list? I will tell you, to spoil it, it's the Tennessee Titans. Just over 45% of the time are they throwing on early downs. They are the last team in this, according to pass rate, behind the Kansas City Chiefs, who are first, second to last. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean by success, but there's a pretty big gulf between the Lions, the Niners, and the Broncos, all of whom are the three teams above the Titans on this list. The Titans are 32 out of 32. Detroit is closer to 50%. San Francisco, well, let's say Detroit's 48%. San Francisco looks like they're about 48 and a half, and the Broncos are at 49, maybe 49.5% of the time are they throwing on early downs. But the Titans are dead last at just over 45%. That's a pretty significant shift from what we expect because the Cincinnati Bengals are second on this list. And of course, you hired the offensive coordinator from the Cincinnati Bengals to be your new head coach. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why that's going to change with what is coming to pass, because part of that is Derrick Henry's presence on the roster. You're going to run the football more when Derrick Henry's on your team. But because Jody says it well, had to stay with the king, little else to lean on. I just don't accept that. I just don't accept that because from 2018 to 2023, and I know shit got bad basically from 21 to 23, but you had A.J. Brown over that period of time. You had Jeff Simmons. You had Corey Davis. I'm pretty sure in 2018 you even had Adam Humphries and Roger Saffold. So it's not like you haven't had good players, good skill players, good offensive linemen over the course of that time. In fact, you've had your best teams over the course of that time. Now, the best teams that the Titans had were built around Derrick Henry. Doesn't mean that you couldn't have maximized your playmakers a little more, even though Derrick has you play a certain style of football. So let's keep it moving here on the Primetime Show, and let's also take a different look at the coaching staff and ask you the question, which position coach was the biggest upgrade this season? It may be simply Bill Callahan, but I do think that there's so much air taken up by Bill's presence that you probably aren't thinking about a lot of the other position coaches. So maybe this just gives you the opportunity to think about the group that Brian has brought in. Again, which position coach hire was the biggest upgrade this offseason? It is something we're going to get into right after I remind you that True Math Fitness in the Gulch makes the Primetime Show possible. Their first workout free is what they offer you. Your first workout free is what they offer you to find out just how great a program, how great all the programs at True Math Fitness are. Like I said, they're going to maximize your ability to improve your physical fitness, because not all of us have the same level of fitness, same level of athleticism, same level of strength, but True Math Fitness will have a plan in place for you as the individual to make sure that you can continue to build on your progress. They have all kinds of great ways to do it, whether it's group fitness classes, personal training, or a top-notch facility for you to get your workout in as you please. TrueMathFitness.com for that first workout free. Which assistant coach, which position coach is the biggest upgrade? Billy Jones says it has to be Daddy Bill. Look at y'all calling this man Daddy. Bill, and it isn't close, not debatable, says Leo. Derek says Colt Anderson, and Colt's not a position coach, but he's a coordinator. As a special teams coordinator, you're saying sight unseen that Colt Anderson is going to be better than what you had in, oh my God, why am I blanking on the former special teams coach name? Why am I blanking? Craig Aukerman, who was fired in season last year after they got the punter hurt, after they got the punter injured for the rest of the year. It was understandably a fireable offense. Colt Anderson is somebody who is regarded well, and perhaps he will be better than Craig Aukerman. But I personally don't know enough about special teams to be able to judge that. Derek says it isn't difficult to be better than Aukerman. Yeah, but I would think as a Titans fan, you would stop using that logic after Dennis Daly and Andre Dillard. Because what you said to me is it isn't difficult to be better than Dennis Daly. And what happened? You got worse after Dennis Daly. So not saying that Colt Anderson is going to be worse than Craig Aukerman. I'm just saying you can't use that logic for anything regarding this football team, because I promise you it can always get worse. Roy L. Wright says, with the trouble the Titans have had, it has to be Bill. And I'll tell you, I'm inclined to agree with you, though I am interested in specifically how Chris Harris is going to work with the corners differently than he did under Mike Vrabel. Because Chris Harris, remember, is one of the holdovers from the Titans' previous staff. But Bill Callahan seems like a pretty safe bet here.
It's great to be here with Brian, my son, and this staff that Brian's put together. It's exciting. It's an exciting time. So, yeah, everything's been very positive so far. We haven't played a game yet, so we're undefeated.
And we heard a team that moved a guy from a right to a left tackle in the past. I know. What are the biggest challenges, and kind of what makes you think JC is a good guy in terms of being able to? Yeah,
I think number one, his athleticism, and then of course all the measurable traits that he has, and then you add in size, power, strength, and it adds up, to making that move. Very similar in my experience at Dallas when I had Tyron Smith when I came into the Cowboys. He was a right tackle in college. He was a right tackle his rookie year, and we flipped him over. And I think that worked out pretty well. And then Jedrick Wills, when he was drafted out of Alabama for the Browns, was a right tackle in college. We flipped him. Another guy in my past was Barry Sims from the Raiders. He was a tackle out of Utah, who we found in the World League at that time, which no longer exists. But he ended up making that switch to left tackle as well. So I think if you have the athleticism, and you have strength, I think, and you have the muscle memory to, change some skill sets, I think it's doable.
You have any doubts about his ability to do it?
I don't.
What do you see in the right tackle candidates that are here on the roster right now in terms of, Nicholas Petit-Ferrer and Jalen Duncan and Watson, who you coached in Cleveland?
Well, they're all here. They're all working hard. I think, to begin with in spring, when you're coming into a new system, new coaches, I'm just evaluating, assessing, trying to help these guys learn a whole new, different toolbox than they're accustomed to. I think they're exceptional hard workers, and that's great. That's a good start for us. But then how it plays out, I think we'll wait. I'll kind of be a little bit more reserved on my judgment until we get into training camp and we get a chance to see him in the preseason.
So that's Bill Callahan. O-line Jesus is somebody who is very excited to be a part of the Titans organization. And I know who Titans fans are even more excited to have him as a part of their program. He is going to be somebody who's tasked with who's going to be tasked with the biggest lift because forgive me, I can't remember who made the comment earlier, just based on what the Titans' problems have been. It has to be Bill Callahan who's the most important or the biggest upgrade at assistant coach. He has the most work to do or the furthest to go to get this to a functioning unit. Titans defense definitely had some problems. You feel like you've gotten that pretty much corrected, not just because of the coaching turnover, but because of the players that you've upgraded with as much as anything. Dylan Cole says Bill gets more hype than any player on the team. Well, yeah, he's more important. I don't want to say that he's more important than any player on the team, but for what this team's biggest problem is, he's probably as important as any player on the team. You cannot function. You've watched this. You cannot function in the NFL without just reasonably competent offensive line play. You literally cannot operate as an offense. And that's what your experience has been for the last 2 seasons, where your offense is consistently undermined by the left tackle position specifically. But then last year, the whole unit was just awful, top to bottom. And that includes Peter Skoronski. So you're hoping that he can continue to improve and make strides there, because right now, his first year of work, understanding that he was dealing with injury and a procedure, it doesn't excuse the lack of performance. And I'm sure he would tell you that. His coaching staff would tell you that. That's the standard that NFL players hold themselves to. If you're available, you're expected to produce. Skoronski was largely available, but was not able to do much based on the lack of help around him, the injury, and then, the struggles of being a rookie. American Toff says Bill will have the biggest positive impact because he will impact every single person on the offensive line. And it's not just about his impact on the offensive line. There's a lot of different facets that Bill Callahan, as a former head coach, as a former college head coach, as a former, I believe Bill Callahan's been an offensive coordinator in his career, if I remember correctly. He has influence and experience at every level of the football team, save the defensive side of the ball. But he's been around long enough to be able to give you insights and help on the defensive side of the ball too. So he can have a lot of impact across the football team and not just about the offensive line group, which is, understandably the place that most Titans fans are going to be thinking about. All right, let's wrap things up with a Gone Viral video. I feel like Keon Coleman is going to make a lot of appearances in the Gone Viral segment, as he will this evening. That's a tease. The question for you is, what's the best thing you've seen on the internet this week on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch? You can tell me what that thing is right after I remind you, or while I remind you, that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress and the intel edge you need to succeed, which can be found at GaryAshton.com. So what's the best thing you saw on the internet this weekend on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch? The best thing that I saw on the internet this weekend, again, is going to be a Keon Coleman clip, him talking about snowmobiles on the Adam Schefter podcast.
You mentioned a snowmobile in Buffalo when you got there. Are you going to be getting a snowmobile now that you're moving to Buffalo?
I don't know, man. I ain't. That's a little dangerous. I like wheels. If it ain't got wheels, I ain't really trying to ride. We'll see. That's a lot of machinery. If anything, I get a snowplow before a snowmobile. I ain't trying to go out there and play in no snow, no snowmobile. They don't have no mountains or nothing out here. Like if this was like somewhere like up in Denver or somewhere, you can go up on a slope or something. I get it, but I ain't trying to drive a snowmobile. That was a joke. People got snowmobiles out here.
People will be driving on a freeway.
On the freeway, why not a four-wheeler?
They have those too.
Yeah,
But the
four-wheeler for
snowmobiles-
sure.
the snowmobiles.
Snowmobiles, if it had wheels, I'd definitely get it, but I ain't dealing with it.
That's Keon Coleman on the Adam Schefter podcast talking about a snowmobile in Buffalo. Dylan Cole says the best thing I've seen was the Obama and Florida comment on yesterday's show. Yeah, the Obama moment was pretty good. What kind of witness protection as camera is Schefter using? Yeah, worldwide leader in sports. Adam Schefter paid more than a lot of NFL players, and they still can't get a good enough camera for him. Ghostface album drops as Jacob Ray. There's a lot of what worst thing is what the TNT crew might be done after this year. No, well, the TNT crew is not going to be done after this year. They're just might get bought by somebody else. Like the TNT crew is not going anywhere. Unless Barkley wants to retire, but I don't think he's talked about retiring anytime soon. I think he's put, it's like Dan Patrick, I think, said he's going to do this for 3 more years before he ultimately retires. But no, just because TNT is losing the rights, when they lose the NBA rights, they'll also lose Shaq, Barkley, Kenny, and Ernie because they're a part of the NBA package. That's not just a Turner thing. So, yeah, the inside the NBA crew is going to work for whomever has the NBA rights. And whether that's Apple, whether that's TNT, ESPN, or otherwise, they're not going to do away with the best studio show in all of sports, football, basketball, baseball, any of it. There's nothing like the inside the NBA. It's really great. Okay, that's going to do it for us tonight on the Primetime program. We appreciate you guys spending your evening here with us. Check out the radio show from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Josh Pate will be in studio. We'll talk about a lot of things that he learned when he made a day-long visit to the University of Tennessee's campus and visited with Josh Heupel, picked up some insights and intel there. That'll be a great discussion with Pate, as always. Like the video on the way out the door, and I'll see you tomorrow night, if I don't see you tomorrow morning, on the Primetime Show.
Go home! Go home! Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!